All right. We're live on Beers, Cheers, and Happenings. We'll be hopefully picking up some viewers here in a minute. So we usually just uh, chat loosely and then we'll do introductions in about a minute. But maybe this time we should just jump right into cracking our beers, actually.
That's
And
a
then we'll
great
do
idea.
introductions after so that
I
people.
like the sound of that.
It's
Okay.
so hot now that we always need a beer.
Even before we introduce our guests, let's just get a beer.
That's what I'm saying.
Let's do it.
Because that way people can get on the
That's
stream. We
right.
can introduce our guest. Yeah.
That's right.
So,
And it gives our guest a chance to get a beer.
yeah. What are you picking there?
What'd you
I
try?
am picking the excellent
Coppers.
Star Galactica. This is
Nice.
something that ever since you guys have made this, I've enjoyed it, and I'm very much appreciate you dropping some off for me today. And I'm going to do it the honor of decanting.
Ah,
I was going to
a
do
real
that,
gentleman. I
but I
appreciate
decided
that.
to go
The whole
canned.
enchilada.
I'm going straight cans. That's
Cans.
been my thing for the show. I think.
I'm gonna
I think
go
I had
for
it in the glass once. So.
Oh, this
Look at
this one green screens out too.
Well,
So we drink out of these cans that have like our backgrounds.
It's like light beer, man.
It changes
Yeah.
all our
Yeah. Let's fill it.
changes all our can art. It's funny.
So we both have Wunderbrau. I grabbed a Wunderbrau
Yeah.
also.
Easy drinking, light, tasty beer.
Darn right. Good stuff.
Mm. Well, cheers. Welcome to Beers, Cheers, and Happening. We are featuring Greg today from Crooked Tree Breadworks. And what fun we're going to have. I put a loaf of bread up here that the viewers can see. This is actually a loaf of bread from Crooked Tree Breadworks, a couple loaves sitting behind us. At least from their Facebook page, which I'm pretty sure was an actual picture because your bread always looks this good. So, Greg, do you want to give just a little introduction more about yourself and maybe how you got into baking?
Sure. Yeah. I got into baking just basically because I liked bread, but it was kind of a circuitous route. I was an English major, and like many of my English major friends, my first job out of college was as a dishwasher in food service. And I was always just drawn to restaurants and such, and food and just the culture of restaurants, and also drawn to crafts and making things legitimately out of quality ingredients. So after kicking around for a little while out of college, I took a job at American Spoon Foods right here.
Okay.
And you're talking about craftsmanship. These guys about wrote the book. Before farm to table was a thing, these guys were farm to table, hand processing, making their jams one kettle at a time. So I took a job with them back in the early 90s, and it was an amazing thing. So by being in the R&D kitchen at American Spoon and just being around creative people who knew what they were doing with ingredients, how to source good stuff, how to manage a crew and get good quality stuff in small to medium-sized batches, all that production line stuff. It was a good environment for me. And what goes better with jam than bread?
Oh,
right. So, and I've always loved really good bread. And at that time, it was really hard to find good bread in America, and specifically in Northern Michigan. And all the bread was just kind of spongy, white plastic wrapped stuff. So what we were doing at American Spoon was we were ordering bread from Zingerman's Bake Shop in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, it didn't look like this. This isn't what you could find in your local store.
You know, I didn't see much of that over. You remember the Carter's?
Yeah.
No, they didn't carry that until we brought it to them.
They had the paper bag guy. I remember that was like their mascot.
The paper bag logo.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was back in the day. But so anyway, I kind of was able to talk my way into an R&D budget when I was at American Spoon and learned how to bake. So we started baking bread there at American Spoon, which we sold through their stores, and it was an amazing process. Just learning to bake. It was we didn't really have the funding and the assets to send me somewhere and let me apprentice. You know, like you would if you were in Europe. We had figured out for ourselves, but thankfully we had myself and my friend Chris Chickering. We had very inquisitive minds, so we decided to just read up as much as we could and eat as much as we could of the good bread wherever we could find it, and teach ourselves how to make sourdough bread from square one. So we developed 30, I remember this, 30 specific batches of making sourdough bread, each one changing 1 to 2 variables. And we started out making some horrific failures to barely eat. But by the end, by batch number 30, we had a real good working knowledge of how to make sourdough bread. And at that point, we were making the bread for the American Spoon Bakery. So I took what I had learned and a few of the other influences. I'd worked on an assembly line before. I worked in an ice cream store. So I had a little bit of production experience, had a little bit of customer service experience. And then I just loved bread. And I took all those things and put them together in a business plan. And in 1996, opened the Crooked Tree Breadworks and started making bread, which my first wholesale order I sold back to American Spoon Foods. And we still work well together.
Yeah, I was going to say you still have a relationship with them.
We do. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't burn that bridge.
Really cool.
Well, that's a great story. It got me thinking. I think you said at the beginning you were an English major, right?
Yeah.
So that's what
by default.
My business partner Ben always has the best joke because we're both English majors. People are like, "How'd you end up brewing beer?" He's like, "Well, the English factories weren't hiring when we got out of school." So I was like, "So I steal that joke. It's just a good solid joke."
Yeah, I usually don't let people in on that because I wasn't a super good student. I was the guy who sat in the back of the classroom when he did show up for class, and then crammed for the final and got by doing it that way. But I can't say I didn't learn anything from it. It was an amazing experience. But I was ready to leave my undergrad when it was time. When I graduated, I was ready to do something else.
Well, I think learning how to communicate. I've found that's a lot of what you learn. You learn how to interact and communicate with people and be creative. I've applied those lessons over and over again in brewing beer.
Absolutely.
And so I think that there's a lot to be learned in an English degree. If you're a creative person, you figure out something you can do with it. And even if it's not teaching English or, writing books about things or novels, although I like to do a little writing. But anyways, there's a good, I think my degree has been helpful in beer brewing and business kind of in general.
Absolutely. No, if you can analyze an idea and communicate it effectively, that's a great skill in any arena. In fact, the first thing and one of the only things I ever had published was my initial business plan for the Breadworks.
Wow.
Which is kind of crazy. I'd worked with SCORE, the local SCORE office, Service Corps retired executives through the chamber. When I was putting my business plan together, I ran it by them because it was free and they were good help. And somebody had approached them 2 years later asking if anybody around had a good business plan. And they sent her over to me and she paid me $500 for my business plan.
Wow.
Used it as a template in a textbook.
So you're published.
I am published.
There you go. And legit, that's awesome.
That's incredibly cool.
Yeah, it is.
$500 is $500. Huh?
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
I can leave that on the table.
Yeah, and you might just be affecting future generations of entrepreneurs. So that's cool too.
Absolutely.
The intrinsic value.
For sure.
Right on. Yeah.
So that's a cool intro into how you got into baking. What was the first? You talked about doing like 30 iterations, so to speak. Now you just make a ton of things. You do baked goods, like cookies, scones, cinnamon rolls. I think I have a
granola.
Yeah. So like, what got you into? What was the starter loaf? Here's a cinnamon roll picture. I think
the starter loaf.
Well, or starter products. Were there a couple things that
sounds like sour bread was one of the first? Right?
That here at the Breadworks, it was definitely. My favorite form of baking is sourdough baking. So I always just wanted to make an ultimate loaf of sourdough. That bread right there, actually, that you got out was our first Breadworks sourdough product. Nice. And it was just something. There's so much about the sourdough process it's pure craftsmanship. And there are no secrets to making sourdough bread.
Yeah.
Flour, water, salt. Boom, that's it. It's kind of like beer. You've got these ingredients. It ain't the ingredients that gets you the end result. It's what you do with them. And figuring all that stuff out, all the variables, managing the weather, the flour quality, the hydration, the changing variable of the well water. Everything changes continually when you're making sourdough bread. And that's why it's so attractive. So that's the thing that I learned to get a handle on was managing the variability. I mean, you want to be between here and here with variability on your sourdough. Because if you'll notice, our regular customers, they notice the difference from day to day, from one loaf to another.
Sure.
And you know, as long as we're from here to here and not way out here, we're going to be able to sell it, and people are going to recognize it as Breadworks sourdough. So managing those variables so you can get, you know, in the window here is the real thing. That's what we learned to do, and we've been able to apply that method to several products that we make. You know, not only just our basic sourdough, but also our pepper parmesan loaf, our cherry pecan loaf.
Those, yeah.
Roasted seed loaf. This is my current favorite, is the roasted seed loaf.
Oh, here,
okay.
hold that back up. Let me see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's a whole wheat sourdough. It's got a high ratio of GT,
Yeah.
Grand Traverse 80 flour in it, which is a sifted whole wheat from Traverse City. It's a sourdough bread. It's got 5 roasted seeds. So we now have systematized the skills and the processes required to stay within our parameters and make consistently good bread. And it took a few years to get that systematized. It's not, you know, it's not something that you can read out of a book. It's the result of a lot of experience. Quite like brewing. It's amazingly like brewing, actually. I have a tremendous respect for you guys, you know, taking these simple ingredients and then doing these crazy things just based on time, temperature, fermentation, and, you know, all that stuff. It's fantastic.
I wanted to do a quick shout out. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Mary is watching. Appreciate you joining in. She said she's drinking a margarita tonight, not a beer, but
That's
Mary,
you know what?
Margarita for date night. So
It's
not a
beers.
date night,
Cheers.
so
We can cheers multiple things.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
cheers our beers to that.
cheers.
Cheers.
Mary. Here's a date
Happy
night.
anniversary,
Thanks for
Mary.
watching. Oh, I didn't realize.
Oh.
Wow, look at that anniversary. I almost missed.
Well,
But,
double cheers.
Double cheers.
Double cheers. Happy anniversary to the Southwoods.
Yeah.
Oh, it was delicious little cheers.
So I thought, like what you talked about there, that was interesting. Is you were talking. Well, you hit on a couple things, but you talked about going like you're doing something craft, so it's not going to be the like white loaf that's like always in this window of consistency. But it's got to be, you know, you have a window of consistency. That's part of the nature of craft and different ingredients. And I find that a lot with our beer too. Like we're always trying to narrow the window and make a consistent product, but by nature, like we're trying to buy good ingredients. We're trying to buy from smaller producers. So not everything always is exactly perfectly the same, but your customer knows to expect. Like if they're getting that beer, there's a fairly consistent flavor profile, even if there's a little variability in that.
It's still recognizable as Copper Star.
Yeah.
Every can, every batch is slightly different.
Yeah. And I also think for us, and I think this really rings true from what I've seen in your portfolio of products, is it's a consistency of quality. So I could go and confidently try a new Breadworks product because I know that it's been vetted, and it's not like you're not putting out there like all 30 of your trials. You're putting out the trials that made it, you know? So even if there's like, even with new products, it's a consistency of brand quality is important, you know?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Again, it took us several years to get to that point. You know, in the early days of the business, when, you know, I was making maybe 40 loaves of bread a day, if 20 of them didn't turn out, I'd be sitting in the back. I'd sell the 20 good ones, and then the customers would be looking at me and say, "What's that back there?" And, oh, you don't want that one. Yes, I do. And so, you know, you explain it, but the goal is to have that be a recognizable loaf of bread that looks just kind of like the one they got last week, you know, not all over the place. Now, that said, we've had some mistakes and kind of happy accidents that we throw out that sometimes turn out really good. In fact, one product that we made a couple of years ago, actually, it seems like a couple of years, actually we made it in the last year, but since this whole COVID shutdown thing, time has shifted. So
slowed down.
Pre-COVID, we were making a bread called honey almond, which actually was a mistake. but it was a really good mistake. It's like we just put too much honey in our sourdough. We didn't add honey to our sourdough, and somebody thought they were making a different bread and measured it and went into the wrong bowl, kind of thing. We're like, well, what the heck? Let's bake it. Let's see what we get. It's we could throw it away or we could bake it. So we baked it, and it turned out to be great. And it turns out we were making it up until COVID. We were making it every Thursday, and we will probably bring it back after the summer when things, we'll see where things are going with the climate and with our business hours and such. But once we get back to some sense of normalcy, we'll probably add it back.
Yeah, happy mistakes are good. I wanted to take a quick pause here because we've done that too. So, what are your business hours now? Speaking of, COVID and and how have things changed a little at the store? And the question here is specifically about hours and access to your product. But I think it'd be interesting to hear, what's changed and how are you dealing with that?
Yeah, right now we are at our regular store hours. We're open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and we're open Saturday from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. and then we're closed on Sunday, which is our regular hours. We have, in order to do that, we sort of escalated to that level. We started when the initial stay-at-home order came on. We closed the store for a couple of weeks, and I was coming in and making bread and selling it at the Toski Sands Market next door to us. And that was the only bread that was available. Okay. Then we went from there. We went to a curbside, which we did for the month of May and into early June. Which was an interesting, again, a learning experience. Some of our customers really liked that, but it was not a super efficient way for us to operate because we really weren't set up for it. Sure. So on June 15th, we opened the store with limited hours, 5 days a week, and then we gradually expanded to where we are now. And in that process, we built out our store so that it is very compliant. We're very firm about people wearing masks in the store, customers, staff. I mean, I don't have one on right now because I'm in my closed office, but if I go outside, I put a mask on because that's what I'm asking my staff to do. So I wear one all the time. It's like you got to walk the walk. But our customers as well have to wear them, and we will ask them if somebody comes in, we'll ask them to put one on. We've got one right by the door if they don't have one. And customers have been amazingly compliant. We've had very, very few of these things you hear about stores where everybody, somebody comes in and slaps you. That just simply hasn't happened to us. I think people really are honoring the rules and stuff. So now we are we're distanced. We've got barriers between our staff and the customers, over the counter, over the cash registers. We have come in through the indoor, out through the outdoor, touch-free handoff. We'll pack your bag, we leave it on a table, and you get to pick it up. So that's where we're at right now.
I think very tactfully done. I stopped in there earlier today, and I thought the decor didn't suffer. I mean, there's something that looking through plexiglass, it suffers a little, right? But I thought the way you implemented it, and I think there was some trim around some of it, and it looked nice,
I had this cool old leaded glass window that was in the basement of my house. Oh, wow. It was 8 feet by like 2 feet, 2.5 feet. So we just suspended that above our pastry counter. It's cool. It's old leaded glass.
That's why it looked
cool. Look terrible.
I didn't.
But it's also effective. So
no, it provides a barrier, and I thought it looked nice when I went in there. So
well, thanks. It's, we've got a lot of signs up and a lot of neon handwritten signs and stuff. So it's there's just a lot to take in, a lot of rules, but we need those rules. So we follow them.
Yeah, it's not perfectly exactly what you'd want. I mean, I would say that's always it's hard, but I think it's, there's different ways to do it. Some places look like, you're walking into
hazmat.
Hazmat place.
We try to put some music on and try to keep it light. And the staff, my staff is amazing. They're 100% behind it. And,
good.
So it's pretty fantastic. Just like, we've had very good experiences at Beards too. We at least once a week when you guys started doing curbside, we would come down and pick up a pepperoni or a couple of growlers. You guys were, gave us these growlers. We've got like 3 of them now. We're going to give back to you when the time comes.
Yeah.
It was pretty amazing to me that you guys were just giving those out.
Well, we did
very
increase
cool.
the price slightly on the
Yeah.
growler fill, but what we tried to do was just make it closer to our cost. We didn't put any profit into the glass.
Yeah.
It was just like get people the product, right?
Well, we really appreciated it.
Yeah, well, and we're actually I'm going to mention this here. I don't think we've sent it out yet, and it's in the test marketing. We're kind of launching it with our mug club, but we're working on a delivery, like a subscription service where you could get a weekly growler delivered to your house.
Wow.
Kind of like the old milk route idea. And then people in our subscription service, if you're listening and you're just joining, you want to get info, just email info@beardsbrewery.com and ask about the subscription service. That's something we're starting up. And I think, we're trying to see, how did this change our business model long term? What can we do? What do we think we can do profitably that we can also provide good value to our customers?
Right.
If you could if you were on, and of course for us, if you're on a weekly growler run, then you could always email us and say, hey, can you throw a 6-pack on there too? And that,
Sure.
we're obviously
And a
hoping that
pizza.
you think, you think about us when you are stocking up for your party that weekend then. But I think it's nice, like people can get fresh beer, and we have a system for it that becomes part of our regular. So if there are future events or whatnot, or even if there's not, it's a nice service, right?
Yeah, the
So
convenience.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't have to deal with the hustle and bustle of the pub if you're not.
Yeah.
Don't have the time or.
Right.
And for locals who are kind of our core,
Mhm.
right? Like in the summer busy season, sometimes it's a pain to come in to just fill your growler. There's a lot of people. So
right.
And that's always been our thing, is like building the local community. I mean, we need the tourists. We don't say that's bad, but we also want to figure out how to provide the best value and support to our locals.
Right. Well, and that's something that I've always appreciated about you guys. I mean, it was when you guys came to Petoskey in the old pub back. How many years have you guys been here now?
We started in 2012.
We'll be 8
yeah,
September, right?
8 on August.
It was, oh my God, I was so glad to see you guys. This was a beer desert, and I spent so much time in the old pub, and I spent a lot of time in the new pub too. The old pub had a real special place for me. My wife and I actually courted at the old pub, and we spent a lot of time there and ended up getting married. So we have very special memories. Now, whenever it's date night, we still go back down to Beards.
That would be the first time that Beards Beer is led to love.
Yeah.
So we had a good couch.
Secret ingredient.
Right?
That couch was great.
The couch, that came from my parents' basement. I grew up on that couch, but it was a good couch in general. So we brought it over to the pub. You know, that's like getting going. We were like, started on a shoestring, right?
Right.
Whatever we could get. So
we loved it though. And it was all locals in there. And whenever we go down there, we still see people we know. I mean, I love that you guys, and the coolest thing you guys did when you moved was, I was honestly a little bit there. I approached your move with trepidation because I'm thinking, oh God, let's not have it turn into one of those parts. What you didn't do that I absolutely love, no screens.
No TVs.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thank
so
you.
Much cooler.
That was integral to our business model. We were we've grown. It's hard. And right now with COVID, we can't let people wander, unfortunately, but that was kind of part of our thing, is like, don't look at the TV. Like maybe you see your friend across the place and you want to go say hi, or like you want to chat with people, right? Get to know people.
Or actually talk to the people at your table, because unfortunately, a lot of times I'll go out with my wife and we always comment to each other. You'll see a group at a table. They've gotten together, and here they all are on their phones.
Maybe we should start taking
take your phone. Now that still happens a little bit, but I will say this about the no screens in there and stuff. Very few times have I had anybody point that out to me. That was a guest that came with me or something, or if I was talking to a guest or anything. And it seems to just naturally
it's organic.
Not force. Organically, more conversation happens there.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's over the food and the brew, instead of let's put the tube on. It's
right. Well, and look at the view. It's like
evokes more conversation, which is really nice.
And if you're just joining and you have thoughts on this, I do this a couple of times. I see we have maybe some new viewers. Please throw a question in. This is Beers, Cheers, and Happenings. We are featuring Greg from Crooked Tree Breadworks. Put the loaf of bread up again. So if you got bread baking questions, beer questions, anything else, we'll make up an answer. Doesn't matter.
Yep.
Give us a question in the comments. Mary said we were talking about the no TVs at the pub, and she said she also loves that. And the view is better than any TV.
Yeah,
so,
this is true.
And I think the conversation is better than any TV, right? Like you should be going out. The social aspect is a big part of it. That's what our growlers say.
Yep.
You know, growlers should be social and shared with friends. And I think for us, that's building
just like breaking bread.
Just like breaking bread.
It is.
You know, bread is very communal as well, right? Because you slice it, it's just another shared something we nourish our body with, and but it's shared. Same thing. It's very communal.
Yeah.
Center of the table.
Yeah.
Gets passed around the whole thing. Yep. No, it's very much a shared experience when you have bread, and that's it's been a historically significant part of the dinner table. It's like and there's so many what's the word I'm looking for? Just so many not analogies, but as an English major, I should have this on the tip of my tongue, but I don't. Just that the references to breaking bread, all the way that it's kind of infiltrated our language. You know, it's like rolling in the dough. It's like
right.
All these things. It's pervasive and has been for all. I say all of humanity, probably not all humanity, but most of Western civilization has grown up around bread and. So anyway, I'm not going to go too deep down that rabbit hole, but I'm glad you got it. Breaking bread is a good thing, and again, I like the idea of people actually breaking the bread.
Yes.
Nothing against sliced bread.
Yes. Yes.
Breaking
bread.
It's a different experience. It's It allows you to further enjoy the crust. It allows you to further enjoy whatever's. If you're having soup or a stew, it allows you to further enjoy all those aspects of that food as well. A lot more than a sliced loaf.
Just because you're getting more surface area of the crust in each.
You get it's like and it's kind of like maybe an analogy would be a proper beer glass. The way that beer hits your tongue, is going to taste different. The way that bread hits your mouth, it's going to taste different with the textural changes of the broken crumb. And then also, if you're scooping up sauce, you do more surface area. So it makes it up, you know.
I mean, it's a different tactile experience too. You know, and breaking the bread, like to me, obviously, like you hear like the best thing since sliced bread, but the idea behind that is kind of like this is a great new product, but slicing things. It makes it so uniform. That doesn't necessarily take away from the product, but there's something when you're dealing with the whole loaf and you're tearing it and it's not perfectly shaped. It's not perfectly sliced pieces that just maybe make you even think a little bit more about the craft behind it.
Well, I had a little bit of an attitude about that when I first opened. I'm not going to say I was a bread Nazi, but I was
no bread for you.
A little over the top. When people would come in, I didn't have a slicing machine. Okay. In my loaves, and sometimes people would ask me to slice them for it, and then I'd tell them, well, you slice it, and now you've exposed the whole loaf to oxygen. It's gonna go stale, blah 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 blah. Squatta wada wada. So I had a young couple come into my store, and they asked, for a loaf of sourdough, and they asked if they could have it sliced. So I got up there, and I'm like, well, you slice it, you're gonna do this, and they were very gracious. They just sat there, they nodded. They're like, yeah, you're right, yeah, I know, yeah. And then the young man took out his Swiss Army knife, keychain size, and opened it up. He says, and this is the only knife we have for camping. So I said, okay, I will hand slice your loaf. And the next day I bought a slicer. I mean, there's a time and a place. Bread.
Well, sandwiches require a good slice sometimes.
They do, absolutely. Restaurants absolutely require sliced bread.
Yeah.
And what I found is that in our wholesaling, right up until COVID, we were selling our bread unsliced in a paper bag because it preserves the crust. And, and I worked hard for that crust. But what I found was when we started selling at Toski Sands, We took sliced bread wrapped in plastic over there, and it sells honestly 3 to 1.
Wow.
Over the unsliced?
I was
just a convenience factor, you think?
I was
People
curious
want sliced bread, and I'm not going to diss it. People want sliced bread.
Right.
And my bread sliced is still better than the other bread sliced. So, it's cool.
I was curious about that because I noticed I got the bread I picked up today in a plastic bag, and I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because it used to always be paper, and there's a practicality, like you make good sized loaves. I can't necessarily always eat them quick enough. Exactly. I usually had to switch from paper to plastic at some point. Otherwise, it got too dried out.
Right. And that's what, we tell people to do. But, how you don't have to. You spend so much time educating. And it just puts people off. So giving them the thing that they want, or, a lot of times, a small family or, a single person will get a loaf and slice the whole thing. Then they'll take and freeze it. And they can pull one slice of that loaf out of the freezer every day for their morning toast. And honestly, when you put it in the toaster, it doesn't really matter whether the loaf was sliced or not. You're going to get kind of the same product. Toasting really refreshes the bread. So it works really well for people. So I got off my soapbox. I've come around. I'm pro sliced bread now.
It's hard. I feel you on that.
Yeah, as an artisan, like
toasting is great, by the way. I love toasting.
Toasting is
I do.
Sorry, I didn't mean.
No, I was okay. No, I was going to say there's a certain point where when you're crafting something, like I'm a painter and sculptor and stuff, and you make your product or your piece and you put it out there. It's at a certain point, it's like, who am I to tell people how to enjoy it? As long as they're enjoying it, that's my satisfaction. You know what I mean?
That's a good insight.
So well, it's like to your point. At a certain point, I think you kind of learn that. Yeah, it's more important that you don't have to get it how I get it, as long as it brings you pleasure.
That's one thing I liked about craft beer is, and there's definitely beer snobs, don't get me wrong, but I felt like the industry in general was like, let's make this craft thing, let's focus on quality, let's make something cool, and then let's share it with everybody. Right. Like it wasn't about like getting a select people that were just knew how to critique it. It was about getting it to as many people as possible and letting them enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not with anything wrong with the artisan education side of it either. There's a lot of people that are interested in that.
No, that's a component.
Like I've learned a bunch today already.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So speaking of education and like popularizing, we had a question here in the comments. Big fans of the British Baking Show. Have you watched that?
I don't have a lot of time to watch TV, but I have watched that one a couple of times. My kids watch it. They love it.
I'm unfamiliar.
Really? You haven't heard of the Great British Baking Show?
No, I don't watch. Myself too. I don't watch.
I don't watch a ton, but it's on. I think it's on Netflix.
Okay.
Yeah. You can binge watch it. And
I'm watching a 90-Day Fiance with my wife, so that's where I'm at. I'm stuck in that land right now. I apologize 1,000 times.
Well, you would. The Great British Baking Show is entertaining.
I would love it. I'm sure.
It is
informational. I mean, it's kind of interesting to see how people approach things. Anyways, what do you think about it? The question was you.
It's a wealth of technical knowledge. I mean, the people are brilliant on the show. The thing I like about it is, unlike so many of the other cooking shows I've seen that are so competitive and they've got the dramatic soundtrack, people are nice on that show. Just nice, just pleasant. It's a lovely show to watch.
So refreshing.
I think sometimes that's the difference between American TV and other countries, is that like American TV is all about the hype. Like, how hype can you make it? Not to diss our system, I mean, but it's interesting. Like, I watched this Japanese reality show that's on Netflix, and it's like Big Brother Slice. It's like just people like are like they live in a house together. They're like worried about one another, like working hard enough and achieving their dream.
Instead of I heard it in the closet.
Yeah, exactly.
And, I'm not gonna let them out.
That's a lot different. Now, the one that I used to like, the Japanese show that got Americanized, was the Iron Chef. Because
I didn't know. So that was originally just a Japanese show.
Oh yeah,
it was, and it was very just over the top drama, and it was just hilarious. It was so great. And then the Iron Chef became American, and they kind of took that and made it American. But I still love the old Japanese ones are great.
Yeah, the announcer.
Well, the show I used to like that talked about technical.
Fighting the red pepper.
Yeah.
The one that I liked that had like humor and over the top humor, but was like technically good was Elton Brown. You
Yeah.
ever watch
Yeah, I
Good
know him,
Eats, where
yeah.
he would talk about the why, and I learned a lot about cooking watching that show.
So did
and
I.
that got
Me
me
too.
excited.
I learned to let my eggs finish on their plate from him.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, there's
good.
a lot of good little tips and tricks. So I wanted to switch gears slightly and talk about, I think when you're in the craft space, part of it is experimenting with new things. And you talked about sometimes those are happy accidents, like we talked about the honey
Yeah.
sourdough. Sometimes there's something you're working on though. So I was going to throw this picture up there.
Yeah.
Because you worked on making some beer breads, and
Oh,
I don't know
yes,
if you're still making it or not, but you were doing at least limited releases of the Citranity, which is one of our session IPA. Can you talk a little bit about the process of cooking bread with beer?
Yeah. It was a great process. And the best part about it was I got to keep a keg of Citranity around the bakery.
Hey.
So
Legitimized keeping beer in your office.
It made R&D really attractive. It was, beer and bread they overlap in so many ways. It's, you're managing these grains, you have these lovely grainy fermented flavors. And what we wanted to do was to get a beer bread that very much tasted like beer. I'd made a few different beer bread recipes, and I'd seen a few of them out there where, beer was an ingredient in the loaf, but it wasn't the entire thing. But we wanted to make a loaf of bread where the ingredients were beer, flour, salt, and yeast. So that's what we did. And there's no other liquid in that bread when we make it. It's just Citranity. So we call it Citranity loaf, and it comes through. And we made another one with the Serendipity Porter, which was amazing as well. So it's we had to tweak things a little bit, but once you get the time and the temperature of the fermentation right, I was afraid that by adding just beer, we would dehydrate the yeast. This isn't a sourdough bread we're talking about here. We're using baker's yeast to poof it up a little bit. But that didn't happen at all. So it kind of begs the question, well, what would happen if we used brewer's yeast for the next step? And I haven't experimented with that yet. But, if you guys, take a little bit of the truth out of your fermenter and throw that in and see what we get, right?
Well, I wonder too, like we don't filter our beers. So there's yeast in there. So even the one you were making with commercial yeast is going to have some yeast that's still probably fairly active.
Right.
And gives you a little bit of kick. I don't know if that helped with the fermentation. That it's probably going to work slower, because it's a smaller quantity. But that would be something that's interesting too. Just like seeing if you could get something going just from the beer.
I think you're going to see a lot of that. And I'm really surprised that, I remember the Bread Bakers Guild, and I follow their message boards a lot and talk with people around the country doing all kinds of cool stuff. But I have yet to see somebody who's really kind of mined that, going with the different brewer's yeast. I mean, it'd be cool to take, a can of Armadillo and then culture the yeast from that and pitch a batch of bread and see what you get. That would be, that's something that I may do that when I retire. I don't know if I have time to do it now.
That's the other problem with R&D is finding the
I'm telling you. Yeah. And running a business. I mean, there's just so many other things that use your time.
Well, we talked earlier about processes, right? Making things repeatable. And that's something we've been working on just in the last, year. And we've been disrupted a little here with the COVID situation, but we've been working on making an intentional R&D process. So it's not just like when we get time, when I get time, when our head brewer gets time. It's like here we're constantly working on new things. That's part of our business model, right? And that's
great.
And so implementing that and finding a way, and for us, it's always been important too about allowing the team to be creative with it. And so it's not just one person that works on R&D, but it's kind of like a team process. So that's part of our thing. And hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have been able to implement more of our ideas and have it a little bit more written down where we here's how we go about it.
Yeah.
But
I was part of a situation like that at American Spoon. I was actually in the R&D department where, we had a list of things to do and reported to the other managers on how it went. And consequently, they made great products. And that's institutionalizing that is a really good idea. Making that part of your business plan is a really good idea. I hope to get there someday. We'll see.
You have to work at it. It doesn't happen if you don't work at it, right? So,
right. Yeah.
And that's not to say like what you're doing is or isn't right. But we just found like, oh man, we used to come up with so many ideas when it was like Ben and I doing a bulk of the brewing, but we got overwhelmed. And then we got some things that stuck, and then we started making those. And it's not like we never came out with new ideas, but we felt like a lot of times some of the new ideas were more afterthoughts in that it was like, oh, well, we should make something new. Let's try something, as opposed to like, we've just kind of culturally are working on it all the time, and we can really pick from the cream of the crop and push it out there. It's not that we would have ever put something out that we didn't think was good enough for a consumer to try, but it was like, I think like if we were intentionally working on the R&D all the time, we could have made better R&D projects that were even more exciting for people. So
yeah. Well, do you think one thing I've noticed with bread customers is if you change anything about their bread reality, man, you hear about it. It's like for us if we're going to introduce a new product, we kind of have to take one off the menu because we only have X amount of capacity.
Yeah.
And as soon as you do that, it might be a bread that maybe 3 people bought per week. But boy, when you take that out, they're going to call you. They're going to tell everybody. It's like, do you find our beer drinkers a little more adventurous, maybe a little more accepting of new products? I mean, bread people are very conservative. As far as what they want, when they want it. I want my daily bread. I
would definitely say the beer consumer, I think the craft culture was kind of built around that a little bit more. But that doesn't mean
you need to start doing flights of bread.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That is a fun idea.
Tiny little one.
Yeah.
We remove things, so we definitely get like, hey, when's this
coming? Pick your heels.
Yeah. So we definitely get that some, but I do think the industry was kind of built around the idea
adventure, kind of.
Yeah, of it's an adventure. I think if we certain things catch, and then if you try to remove those, people are like, wait, what about that?
Yeah.
Or when's this coming back? Or occasionally it'll be like, hey, I had this beer like 3 years ago. I've been keeping my eye out for it. We're like, oh, well, that was just like kind of a one-off, but maybe we'll throw another batch out there. And that is something.
And then you have to repeat it.
Yeah.
Well, then you gotta find the window.
We haven't got the consistency down yet on that. Here's a good one. Flights of bread.
Flights of bread. There you go.
That's what I'm saying. So that is turns out a great idea we just came up with.
It is.
Thanks for talking, Jen. Speaking of Jen, she's a musician, so this got me thinking some things you do outside of the brewery, right?
Yeah.
You play music.
I do.
Bands. What do you think? This has been hard for musicians, I know too, but outside of maybe COVID times, like, give us a little bit into your music history.
Yeah, I was unaware of this. This is good stuff.
Well, my music history has mostly been playing in a lot of garage bands until I put together. What I realized was I knew a lot of people that were in real bands that had a lot of talent, including Jen, who just commented.
Yeah.
So I took the liberty of introducing these people to each other to start a band. When I turned 50, I always said, I'm going to start a honky tonk band.
Yeah.
Just because.
So you were the instigator.
Well, I was actually.
I didn't know that. That's great. Yeah. I always called it like the Petoskey super group.
That's the only way I could get into the band. You see, These guys all have talent, so I brought them all together, and we played, and the band is called the Easy Picks. We played it at the pub several times.
Yeah.
And playing at the pub has been a fantastic thing. It's been so much fun. It's been a dream come true. Prior to that, I played in a lot of garage bands just with friends. Couple of paying gigs, not so many. But then I'm suddenly surrounded by all this talent. It's like, wow, people will actually pay us to play. It's pretty cool. So we go out and play. The COVID thing has been, everything's on pause right now. Hopefully when we get out of this sort of drought, we'll emerge with a creative burst. I know that right during the COVID, I haven't really been playing very much at all. I've been doing other things, but I find that can sometimes, when you get back to it, pulling yourself away from something creative for a little while and then going back into it. You maybe have a little better perspective. So that's what I'm hoping will happen. Even though I've completely lost my guitar calluses, and I probably can't even carry a tune into a mic right now, but all that'll come back, and hopefully more creatively, because I stepped away.
Yeah.
So I'd been looking for a long time. I've played guitar for a while, but always electric pretty much. And I always wanted to buy an acoustic. So finally, through all this, I'd had my eye on it. I was kind of like planning on, I'd been guitar shopping for like the last year, kind of settled on what I wanted. And then
What'd you get?
It's a Takamine. Which is like a Japanese guitar. It's called a P3NY, which is like a parlor style. So it's not the big dreadnought body. It's a little smaller, New Yorker style. It's a steel string, but it has the headstock looks like a nylon. Yeah. It's really pretty. I've been enjoying playing that and trying to get back into music a little bit. I did that too. I sort of fell out of it when I started my business because it's just it's so much work, and then
it really is.
But I just play for myself mostly, but I've been enjoying getting back into it a little.
Awesome. What kind of stuff do you play? What kind of music?
Well, with mostly what I was always into is like classic rock, and with the electric, I have a Les Paul. So I was kind of really into like Led Zeppelin and that kind of. But I'm into like more progressive metal, which is not something I play as much because it's very technical. So
that's beyond me.
But I don't know. I'd like to mess around. I haven't gotten into this yet, so I can't really speak to doing it, but I'd like to mess around a little bit more now that I have an acoustic with some finger style stuff. I really like how that sounds, and I'd like to learn some of that technique, so that maybe is my next project. But
the one thing I've learned about playing guitar is that if you feel like your guitar playing isn't quite up to the level you'd like it, buy another guitar.
Right. Definitely. That's where I'm at. I was like, I need to buy a good guitar because then I'll play it more and I'll like how it sounds and I'll be a little bit better.
That's your duty.
Better. That's fine. I always think about things like that too as an investment, because I'm like, man, I'll play this guitar the rest of my life. Like, I don't really see a reason to get rid of this
lifetime
thing, right?
purchase.
Like, this is so if then with my business hat, I was like, okay, so I'm in my 30s. If I amortize this out for another 50 years, maybe 40, depending on
easy rationalization, and plus there'll be some residual value and perhaps an appreciation factor. You never know.
So I can I could inherit it off to someone or
family heirloom.
Exactly.
Now my favorite guitar is one I bought in 1988. It was a 79 Guild acoustic dreadnought, spruce top. Those were just big and beautiful. And I have a few other guitars, but that one is still far and above my favorite one to play. And I sound better when I play that one.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're probably just by default, if you've been playing that the longest, it's got to be the thing you're the most comfortable with.
It is.
That's so your fingers just move better on it. Yeah.
That's cool.
So
hopefully we'll be back at the pub before too long. It's we're trying to get some I've got a few original songs that we were just kind of starting to kick off before the COVID thing. So we'll see if those ever come to fruition.
Yeah. Well, we're just starting to do music again, mostly single acts and stuff, and really easing into it carefully. So, but we're hoping that we can build it up. Obviously, we had dedicated a whole portion of our, it's valuable floor space in a restaurant. But for us, the music was an important part. So it's something we want to get back to in full force. With the stage, we were able to dedicate space. And I mean, you remember the old pub. I always thought this was cool. Like the musicians were like standing like in the tables, but
I reach out and grab a fry.
Exactly.
We didn't have fries.
Well,
you reach out and
somebody brought them. They brought them.
They brought them.
You don't know, Peter.
Yeah, it's true. All right. Well, if anyone's watching, a last call to add questions in the comment, please. We have Greg from Crooked Tree Breadworks. So if you got any bread questions, you got beer questions, throw them out. We got a looking good from Cindy. Thanks for watching. If you got any questions about what we're doing here, please throw them in the comments. We love the engagement with the viewer. We'll probably be wrapping up in about 5-10 minutes. So if you do have a question, throw it out there.
So many questions during the COVID shutdown with bread baking. It was.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Probably everyone was trying to bake their own bread, and they're like, "Hey, I know that guy that makes really good bread."
Oh yeah. No, everybody wanted their own sourdough starter. They all wanted to do it because they've got all this time and they're all sitting at home. They can't go to restaurants. It's like, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make some bread. I'm going to make a sourdough starter. So I got phone calls and text messages and emails all day about people. Why did my starter die? And they'd send me a picture of some muck in a bowl. Yeah. Like, can you look at this?
Everyone was like, "Hey, I got a little spare time. You know what I'm gonna do? The hardest style of bread. Like, I'm not gonna start with like the baker's yeast white loaf. No, I'm gonna try to make my own starter from scratch."
That's right. We're going back to basics here. We're gonna start with nothing but flour, water, and salt.
Yeah.
And amazingly, a lot of people did, and it turned out. Yeah. It turned out really good. Other people got a little frustrated, but the problem they had was, I don't have any flour. So, hey, Greg, can you give me flour? And it turns out before we shut down, I managed to have a truckload of flour on hand. So I was a very popular guy during the shutdown. And I had a little system where I'd leave it out back in the delivery van, and they'd leave the money.
Bags of flour.
Yeah.
Nobody got suspicious. None of the neighbors got suspicious.
Wow. Greg's got all these guys stopping by, grabbing like little white powder bags.
Is that money they're leaving?
Yeah. That's hilarious.
It's crazy. But people rediscovered it, which was great. And people got some good results. And others, what it really did was it got us customers. Like, you do this every day, I'm buying it from you.
Yeah.
I'm sure that
realized what it was we were doing. And
a lot of craft, like homebrew, started before craft brew, really, right? And people were doing it because it wasn't available to buy. And I've talked to craft brewers that are like, well, I've fallen out of it a little because I have such good options to buy now, and it's a lot of work to do it.
It is. I stopped homebrewing when you guys came to town.
Yeah, there, case in point, right there.
You guys are doing it for me.
Yeah. So.
Hey, what do you think it is in you that's so willing to share things like how to do the starter for sourdough? Because there's a lot of people that wouldn't be willing to do that, want to keep it, close to themselves, not share their secrets.
Yeah.
This is something you do for a living, obviously. Because there's in my time anyways, I feel like you always, there's not much middle ground there. There's either the people that are willing to share with everybody, here's how I do things, enjoy, if you can,
or everyone's my competition,
or everyone's my competition, or potential competition. So what do you think it is in yourself that has led to the side that you've obviously fell on?
Boy, I don't know what it is about myself. It's there aren't really any secrets with bread. It's flour, water, salt, and yeast. Wherever your yeast comes from, whether it's sourdough or baker's yeast. You can find anything you need to know on the internet. So if somebody cares enough to ask me how to do it, I'm gonna encourage that. I think that getting people, when people care about stuff, good things happen, no matter what.
Yeah.
And you can encourage somebody to get passionate about something, even if it's just something as simple as bread, just by giving them a little advice or handing them off a little bit of flour. I think that makes, I don't want to get all kumbaya here, but that makes.
No, please do.
I think that's
what I'm asking. Yeah.
Well,
it's something, I think if we would share these things and share the knowledge, I don't know, everybody, people who want to know, I think earnestly and honestly aren't going to rip you off.
Right.
They're not doing it to rip you off. They're there because they want to make a better world.
Well, and because they care and are excited. That's the exciting part, is getting other people passionate about what you do.
Yeah.
And I think in beer, we always said, making beer is easy. Making consistent quality beer is hard. Sure. And it's kind of the same thing in the loaf of bread, right? Like you can make something that looks like a little bit of a loaf of bread, but making it good and making it consistent, you got to really get passionate. And if you get that person, that's cool. Now they're your peer, and they can, and maybe you don't get that person, but they realize now they have more appreciation for buying it from you because they understand the process and what artisanship goes into it, right? So
yeah. Now that said, I have had people who with very thinly veiled attempts to get recipes from us, and that it's like I'll talk to them personally, but it's very unlikely that anybody's going to start a competition.
Yeah,
a competitive bakery here. It's like, okay, I got Greg's sourdough recipe. I'm going to go down the street and do the twisted bush. Next door. That's probably not going to happen. So I just want to encourage people to when they like what they do, when they like good bread, then the chances are they like good food. Chances are they like good company. I don't know. It's a certain kind of person who asks, and I will help those people.
Yeah. Well, I've been into baking. That's kind of how I got into a beer to an extent. I'd never done a lot of sourdough, so I did some sourdough over the shutdown again because I had a little bit more time. I was around my house all the time to do the steps, but I almost always keep a sourdough starter going because I will make sourdough pancakes. I just made sourdough biscuits. It imparts a lot of flavor apart from like actually using it as a rising agent. If you can add this cultured flour that's got like a tart, like additional chewy flavor. The pancakes I make are more of savory, like they're 100% sourdough starter. They have an egg in them. I make them kind of like a crepe, and then like I spread like egg on it, and they're thin so the egg cooks through it, and then you put like cheese and like roll it up kind of like a crepe.
That sounds amazing.
So to me it's where I don't like hardly ever
I rarely know when you're making those.
I rarely discard starter. I just keep feeding it, and then when I get too much I make whatever, but I don't always have time to make the bread, but I always have a little starter around, so if I do want to make a loaf, I got some there. And
that's a cool thing. It's very it's continuity in the kitchen and just continuity in life. That's one of the beautiful things about sourdough. It's just so elegant, but once you get a culture that's established, your culture, they're incredibly consistent. It's kind of hard to kill them once they're established.
It's fun. It's something to do. It's something to work on. Part of what I enjoy a little bit in the kitchen is having a little bit of routine. I get up, I make my French press. I've always liked grinding my own coffee, partly because quality, partly because like I like the smell. I like having a little bit of morning routine to it, right? Like in the French press is visual and you smell it like when you're
it's like a ritual almost.
Yeah, so you do that, feed my starter and like get everything going for the day, feed the cats, it's like I got some process things, and it's like it's kind of nice. So
just gonna be another day.
All right. Well, Greg, for people watching still, like you do online stuff too, like maybe just give us a little bit about what's the best way to get your bread, your other products. How should people get a hold of you if they have an interest in getting you in their business or something? Just give us the little spiel on that.
Well, we do have a website, www.breadworks.com, which is a fully functional online storefront. So if you want to have bread shipped to your house, that's the best way to do it. If you want fresh bread, come see us. We're out on M119 out by Petoskey State Park, next to the Petoskey Sands Shopping Center. Come in. We do fresh bread daily. We do.
They say free smells at Jimmy John's, but the smells you get in Breadworks, it's worth the trip alone.
You should probably pay for them.
Yeah, seriously, come in, right about 8:00 when we open, and all the bread's just filling. The aroma is fantastic. We also sell, we do some shelf-stable products. We do a very popular product, actually, this one here, Addictive Granola.
Tell me about that. I've never had it.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. I have an excuse. I've only lived here so many amount of years. I'm still new to the year.
Something that we started making pretty early on. Probably in the late 90s. because we had the ingredients laying around.
Yeah.
And, people just loved it. So we started making more and more of it. And it's available now via mail order. We also have, we sell it through a couple of distributors. It's in some of the stores down in the Detroit area. We work with a distributor called Our Hurt Company. We buy, nuts and cheese from them, and they distribute it down in Detroit for us. So we're in the Bush's markets, the Plum markets, a couple other specialty markets around the state. So it's available there. And, if you can't find it there, you can always get it on the web store. And we always have it at the storefront as well.
Okay.
Awesome.
As far as wholesale goes, we deal with a number of restaurants, and we're always open to, starting a relationship. We like long-term relationships generally, and all of our wholesale customers have been, with us for a long time. It's kind of a, we like to support each other. So we're open to, if you're interested in wholesale, just give us a call at the Breadworks or shoot me an email. My email is pretty easy to remember, breadhead@breadworks.com.
Oh, nice.
And then, so that'll get directly to me. And then our phone numbers, 231-347-9574 for the storefront. And anybody who picks it up will be able to get you the information you need.
Perfect.
Yeah, contact us anytime.
All right. Well, thanks for being on the show.
I was just going to ask if you had any Breadhead T-shirts made yet.
Oh,
because
man.
I don't, but I do have Flower Power T-shirt.
Okay.
But the Breadhead will probably be the next.
That might be
That's
the
a
next
good
one.
idea.
Awesome.
I think we're going to do an addictive granola T-shirt too. It's on the back. It's going to say, "I can quit anytime I want."
That's great.
I like it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us on Beers, Cheers, and Happenings. I think that maybe is a wrap for this week, unless you had anything else you wanted to share.
No, it's been a pleasure talking with you guys.
Yeah, Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.